It's no secret that in the era of bodybuilding that was limited to bare bones equipment, limited knowledge on bodybuilding training and nutrition methods, that some of the most impressive physiques in the history of bodybuilding were built. In many cases with only access to a barbell, some dumbbells, a bench, and maybe one cable machine if they were lucky. The bodybuilders in the 60s and 70s used very basic staple exercises, progressive weights, and old school mass gain principles. For many bodybuilders, that was in fact the basic old school full body routine done 3 times per week. And despite what many people think, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself was in fact one of them. But when you say the name Arnold Schwarzenegger, everyone associates him with those crazy high volume 6 day per week double split training routines, when in fact, that was just his pre-contest training system. And not only did he build the base of his physique using a more simplified routine, he even advocated doing so himself early on in his career. This is something that I covered in an entire video, which I'll link for you guys to watch at the end of this video, so you can see the exact routine that he suggested. And hint, it was only 3 days per week. But today, I'm going to show you another training routine that's a great example of a basic old school mass gain routine done in that era. This one, very similar to Arnold's training system. This goes to show you just how common this style of training actually was back then, despite what many people think. And the routine that we're going to look at today was created by Mosey, who was a bodybuilding photojournalist back then, but also a bodybuilding competitor. He had done lots of work in the bodybuilding industry early on, and one of the things he did in addition to that was, in fact, working directly with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And from that, he learned some of the staple training principles that Arnold used to build the base of his physique. And when you look at his training system, you can't help but see the huge similarities to his training system. And I want to quote something that I read directly from him that should be a principle that everyone lives by. He said, "If you still need to add 20 or more pounds of basic muscle mass, the following program is for you. Even if you've been training for 1 year or 10, the basics are what you need to build basic muscle mass." Is that really hard to understand? This is actually something that I've also stated multiple times. And the key point here that I want to stress is, even if you've been training for 10 or more years, but you still haven't built that foundation of muscle mass, you are in fact still a beginner. So let's dive into the exact routines used back then to build muscle mass. This one called for exactly 10 total exercises, nothing more, nothing less. They were in this order: the barbell squat, the barbell bench press, the incline press, the wide grip chin, bent over row, seated press behind the neck, barbell curl, lying tricep extension, deadlifts, and calf raises. These 10 exercises were to be done 3 times per week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all done with very specific sets and reps. And as you may know, back then, 5x5 was a staple set and rep scheme. But another method, and one that was used in this routine, was the 8x6 method, done with progressive weights over 5 sets. How this works is, done with a lighter weight for the first set, you'll perform 8 repetitions. And then you'll increase the weight on set 2 while dropping the rep range to 6. Follow that up with another weight increase for, again, 6 repetitions. That would be your first and top heavy working set of the day. And you would repeat that weight for an additional 2 working sets of 6 reps. That's 5 total sets, the first 2 being warm-ups, and the last 3 are working sets. And many of you might ask, why the arbitrary number of 6? Back then, in most programs, and even many strength programs today, 5 is the staple number, as 5 sets of 5, done for a total of 25 reps, done with a heavy load, has been shown time and time again to be an excellent volume protocol for both strength and size. And here, the goal was to aim for 6 reps, but the program was set up in such a way that on the last 2 sets, fatigue might occur, and it was understood that you might only get 5, 4, or maybe even 3 reps on the later sets. But even if reps dropped off due to fatigue, the goal was to stick with that weight until you can complete all working sets of 6 repetitions. That's very basic weight progression done over time. This was used on every movement in the program and essentially reinforced solid technique, good form, and the goal wasn't to add weight to the bar every single session, regardless if you're stronger or not. The goal was to keep hammering that lift until strength and muscular adaptations occurred, and then you'd add weight over time. Now, of course, let's address some of the concerns and critiques most people will have on this training style. First, with 10 total exercises, 5 sets done on each of them, we're talking about 50 sets in one workout. And I agree, 50 sets that's excessive. But first, let's understand the first 2 sets are lighter warm-up sets. And those are not sets that I would consider working sets. So the truth is, we're actually at 30 working sets for each session. Is that still high volume in my opinion? Yes, absolutely. But the one thing that many people don't take into account, the question you need to ask is, what is the weekly training volume here? We're talking about 90 total working sets. And I'm not going to say that that's low volume, but that's also not far off from what most programs actually call for. Let's use the basic 1 body part per session bodybuilding style training split. Most bodybuilders perform somewhere between 12 and 20 working sets each time they're in the gym. At 5 days per week on average, that's roughly 60 to 100 sets weekly. And I know many bodybuilders that fall in line with that number, or way more than 100 sets per week. The next concern is obviously doing movements like the barbell deadlift 3 times per week. That argument is something that I 100% agree with, and it's not something I'd recommend for most people to do. However, you have to understand that this system was built around access to equipment, and there weren't many other options. Today, we can easily remedy this by picking less invasive movements that would allow for higher training frequencies, something like hamstring curls, hyperextensions, and even RDLs. And my personal recommendation would actually be to do all 3 of them spread throughout the week, so that there's a different hip hinge variation and hamstring exercise done Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's actually how I would adjust this entire program over time for stronger, more advanced bodybuilders. Many people think this style of training is only for beginners, but as you become stronger, you don't need to change the program you're running. You just need to adjust it. For stronger, bigger bodybuilders, more exercise variations should be used to help with recovery and to avoid stagnation. I would personally pick 3 variations of this entire workout so that you can keep the frequency high, but the exact exercises are only trained once per week. Again, something that really wasn't an option back then. For example, instead of hitting the flat bench 3 times per week, on Monday, you could flat bench. Wednesday, you could do a flat dumbbell press. And Friday, you can do a machine press. The same thing applies for each movement. Pick 3 and rotate them. You'll find that by only training that one movement once per week, you'll have more room for consistent progression and less chance of stalling. And you'll still have all of the benefits of hitting that body part 3 times per week and still recovering. And if training 3 times per week just isn't your thing, and you have 4 or 5 days to get in the gym, and you prefer a more modified upper-lower / body part split style training routine, you can use the same systems that I personally use and recommend to my clients, with the 4-day torso and limb split and the 5-day old school mass gain program, which you can find both below in the description. And as always, if you guys want to see more of the best original bodybuilding content just like this, make sure to hit subscribe.